أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Thank you so much for all those who are joining us for the Chehlum 40th Majlis of Anis Ali Mir. I would like to extend my sincerest condolences to the very respected Mir family. May Allah bless and protect you all, and may Allah give you patience through these times. Inshallah, we'll go ahead and start with the recitation of Quran, Surah Yasin, and after that we'll have our dear brother Muhammad Ali Mir recite the Susan Marcia in Urdu. وصلوات على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ياسين والقرآن الحكيم إنك لمن المرسلين على صراط مستقيم تنزيل العزيز الرحيم لتنذر قوما ما أنذر آباؤهم فهم غافلون لقد حق القول على أكثرهم فهم لا يؤمنون إنا جعلنا في أعناقهم أغلالا فهي إلى الأذقان فهم مقمحون وجعلنا من بين أيديهم سدا ومن خلفهم سدا فأغشيناهم فهم لا يبصرون وسواء عليهم أأنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون إنما تنذر من اتبع الذكر وخشي الرحمن بالغيب فبشره بمغفرة وأجر كريم إنا نحن نحيي الموتى ونكتب ما قدموا وآثارهم وكل شيء أحصيناه في إمام مبين واضرب لهم مثلا أصحاب القرية إذ جاءها المرسلون إذ أرسلنا إليهم اثنين فكذبوهما فعززنا بثالث فقالوا إنا إليكم مرسلون قالوا ما أنتم إلا بشر مثلنا وما أنزل الرحمن من شيء إن أنتم إلا تكذبون قالوا ربنا يعلم إنا إليكم لمرسلون وما علينا إلا البلاغ المبين قالوا إنا تطيرنا بكم لئن لم تنتهوا لنرجمنكم وليمسنكم منا عذاب أليم. قالوا طائركم معكم أئن ذكرتم بل أنتم قوم مسرفون. وجاء من أقصى المدينة رجل يسعى قال يا قوم اتبعوا المرسلين اتبعوا من لا يسألكم أجرا وهم مهتدون. وما لي لا أعبد الذي فطرني وإليه ترجعون. أأتخذ من دونه آلهة إن يردني الرحمن بضر لا تغن عني شفاعتهم شيئا ولا ينقذون. إني إذا لفي ضلال مبين. إني آمنت بربكم فاسمعون. قيل ادخل الجنة قال يا ليت قومي يعلمون. بما غفر لي ربي وجعلني من المكرمين. وما أنزلنا على قومه من بعده من جند من السماء وما كنا منزلين. إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم خامدون. يا حسرة على العباد ما يأتيهم من رسول إلا كانوا به يستهزئون. ألم يروا كم أهلكنا قبلهم من القرون أنهم إليهم لا يرجعون. وإن كل لما جميع لدينا محضرون. وآية لهم الأرض الميتة أحييناها وأخرجنا منها حبا فمنه يأكلون. وجعلنا فيها جنات من نخيل وأعناب وفجرنا فيها من العيون ليأكلوا من ثمره وما عملته أيديهم أفلا يشكرون. سبحان الذي خلق الأزواج كلها مما تنبت الأرض ومن أنفسهم ومما لا يعلمون. وآية لهم الليل نسلخ منه النهار فإذا هم مظلمون. والشمس تجري لمستقر لها ذلك تقدير العزيز العليم. والقمر قدرناه قدرناه منازل حتى عاد كالعرجون القديم لا الشمس ينبغي لها أن تدرك القمر ولا الليل سابق النهار وكل في فلك يسبحون وآية لهم أن الفلك المشحون وخلقنا لهم من مثله ما يركبون وإن نشأ نغرقهم فلا صريخ لهم ولا هم ينقذون إلا رحمة منا ومتاعا إلى حين وإذا قيل لهم اتقوا ما بين أيديكم وما خلفكم لعلكم ترحمون وما تأتيهم من آية من آيات ربهم إلا كانوا عنها معرضين وإذا قيل لهم أنفقوا مما رزقكم الله قال الذين كفروا للذين آمنوا أنطعم من لو يشاء الله أطعمه إن أنتم إلا في ضلال مبين ويقولون متى هذا الوعد إن كنتم صادقين ما ينظرون إلا صيحة واحدة تأخذهم وهم يخصمون فلا يستطيعون توصية ولا إلى أهلهم يرجعون ونفخ في الصور فإذا هم من الأجداث إلى ربهم ينسلون قالوا يا ويلنا من بعثنا من مرقدنا هذا ما وعد الرحمن وصدق المرسلون إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم جميع لدينا محضرون فاليوم لا تظلم نفس شيئا ولا تجزون إلا ما كنتم تعملون إن أصحاب الجنة اليوم في شغل فاكهون هم وأزواجهم في ظلال على الأرائك متكئون لهم فيها فاكهة ولهم ما يدعون سلام قولا من رب رحيم وامتازوا اليوم أيها المجرمون ألم أعهد إليكم يا بني آدم أن لا تعبدوا الشيطان إنه لكم عدو مبين وأن اعبدوني هذا صراط مستقيم ولقد أضل منكم جبلا كثيرا أفلم تكونوا تعقلون هذه جهنم التي كنتم توعدون اصلوها اليوم بما كنتم تكفرون اليوم نختم على أفواههم وتكلمنا أيديهم وتشهد أرجلهم بما كانوا يكسبون ولو نشاء لطمسنا على أعينهم فاستبقوا الصراط فأنى يبصرون ولو نشاء لمسخناهم على مكانتهم فما استطاعوا مضيا ولا يرجعون ومن نعمره ننكسه في الخلق أفلا يعقلون وما علمناه الشعر وما ينبغي له إن هو إلا ذكر وقرآن مبين لينذر من كان حيا ويحق القول على الكافرين أولم يروا أنا خلقنا لهم مما عملت أيدينا أنعاما فهم لها مالكون وذللناها لهم فمنها ركوبهم ومنها يأكلون ولهم فيها منافع ومشارب أفلا يشكرون واتخذوا من دون الله آلهة لعلهم ينصرون لا يستطيعون نصرهم وهم لهم جند محضرون فلا يحزنك قولهم إنا نعلم ما يسرون وما يعلنون أولم ير الإنسان أنا خلقناه من نطفة أولم ير الإنسان أنا خلقناه من نطفة فإذا هو خصيم مبين وضرب لنا مثلا ونسي خلقه قال من يحيي العظام وهي رميم قال من يحيي العظام وهي رميم قل يحييها الذي أنشأها أول مرة وهو بكل خلق عليم الذي جعل لكم من الشجر الأخضر نارا فإذا أنتم منه توقدون أوليس الذي خلق السماوات والأرض بقادر على أن يخلق مثلهم بلى وهو الخلاق العليم إنما أمره إذا أراد شيئا أن يقول له كن فيكون فسبحان الذي بيده ملكوت كل شيء وإليه ترجعون صدق الله العلي العظيم إلى أرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات خصوصا our مرحوم إن شاء الله أنيس أليمير نعوذ مرحومين المرحومات رحم الله من يقرأ الفاتحة مع الصلوات اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم Inshallah, as mentioned, go ahead and benefit from beautiful voice of the nephew of the marhoom, with your dear brother Muhammad Ali Mir, with the Susan Marcy and Urdu, inshallah. With the salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
آغوش لغد میں جب کہ سونا ہوگا جب کہ سونا ہوگا جز خاک نہ تکیا نہ بچھونا ہوگا تنہائی میں کون ہوئے گا انیس تنہائی میں اللہم صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم۔ جب اربعین کو آئے حرم قتل گاہ میں، جب اربعین کو آئے حرم قتل گاہ میں، تاریک آسمانوں زمیں تھے نگاہ میں، پنہاں تھے شکل کعبہ لباس سیاہ میں، گئے سو کھلے تھے سوگے شہید الہ میں، گئے سو کھلے تھے سوگے شہید الہ میں، روئی جو شہزادیاں منہ ڈھانپ ڈھانپ کے، لاش حسین رہ گئی بس کانپ کانپ کے، لاش حسین رہ گئی بس کانپ کانپ کے، یوں خاک پر پڑا تھا مرقع بطول کا، اعضا جدا تھے لاش کے اور دست و پا جدا، بے گور و بے کفن تھے شہیدان کربلا، کوئی کسی کی لاش پر جز بے کسی نہ تھا، کوئی کسی کی لاش پر جز بے کسی نہ تھا، افتاد خاک پر تھا سلیمان فاطمہ، پر جبرائیل کا تھا نہ دامان فاطمہ، پر جبرائیل کا تھا نہ دامان فاطمہ، یوں پہلو حسین میں تھا لاشِ صغیر، بانچوں میں شیر لب پہ انگوٹھا گلے پہ تیر، وقت قضا ملا تھا جو اس کو نہ آب و شیر، کھولے ہوئے دہن تھا وہ رش پہ مغے منیر، کھولے ہوئے دہن تھا وہ رش پہ مغے منیر، ننھا سا کرتا تن میں لہو سے بھرا ہوا، ایک ہاتھ تھا حسین کا اس پر دھرا ہوا، ایک ہاتھ تھا حسین کا اس پر دھرا ہوا، اکبر تھے یوں قریب شہنشاہ نیک ذات، ٹکڑے بدن کلیجے میں پرچی جگر پہ ہاتھ، 18ویں برس میں زمانے سے کی وفات، نیزے کا پھل ملا ثمر گلشن حیات، نیزے کا پھل ملا ثمر گلشن حیات، فرزند پاس یوں تھے پسر بوتراب کے، دو چاند پہلوؤں میں تھے ایک آفتاب کے، دو چاند پہلوؤں میں تھے ایک آفتاب، ناگاہ کی نگاہ غرم نے دیکھا پڑا غلاش عباس نیک ذات سینے پہ مشق لاش کے پہلو میں دونوں ہاتھ ہر دم دہان زخم سے کہتا ہے وہ یہ بات ہر دم دہان زخم سے کہتا ہے وہ یہ بات سینے پہ اب تلک ہے نشانی سکینہ کی پرواہ دریغ تشنا دہانی سکینہ کی پرواہ دریغ تشنا دہانی سکینہ کی جس دام یہ حال گنج شہیدہ نظر پڑا بانوں نے لاش علی اصغر اٹھا لیا چادر سے پہنچا سوکھا ہوا دودھ بانچوں کا مردے کے منہ کے بوسے لیے اور یہ کہا مردے کے منہ کے بوسے لیے اور یہ کہا تم سے بچھڑ کے میں رہی فریاد و آہ میں اصغر کہو ڈرے تو نہیں قتل گاہ میں اصغر کہو ڈرے تو نہیں قتل گاہ میں جب اربعین کو آئے
For the sawab of Marhoom Sayyid Anis Ali Hussain Mir, Al-Fatiha. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Malik yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم فوضوا أمري إلى الله إن الله بصير بالعباد ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل ونعم المولى ونعم النصير والصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على الرسول المسدد المصطفى الأمجد المحمود الأحمد الذي سمي في السماء بأحمد وفي الأرض بأبي القاسم محمد اللهم صل على محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين المنتجبين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا وقل رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي أما بعد قال الله تبارك وتعالى في كتاب الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وقضى ربك أن لا تعبدوا إلا إياه وبالوالدين إحسانا صدق الله العلي العظيم. My respected scholars, elders, brothers and sisters in Iman in California, throughout the United States, throughout Canada, throughout the United Kingdom, and throughout the globe, wherever you may be watching. Salamun alaykum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Question: how will you be remembered? Keep that question in the back of your mind, inshallah. We will return to it. Death, a topic which we often do not welcome in the West, a topic in modern societies, in industrial societies, one which we oftentimes fear. But is this a topic and something that we should fear, or is this perhaps something that can help us in this world and in the next? The ancient Greeks had a slogan, they had a saying, It was memento mori. Memento mori meaning that remember your mortality, remember your death. Because when one remembers that mortality, it makes life, the life which you and I are living today, it makes it richer. And it makes us contemplate and think about the big questions of life, such as what are my priorities in life? What am I doing with my life? How will I be remembered after my life? These big questions, which not confronting death makes us negligent of, the ancient Greeks realized that it was a valuable question, as well as Islam. The Holy Prophet of Islam came forward and said, Mutu qabla an tamutu. Die before you die. Meaning what? That we understand that the second death in this phrase refers to this idea that we will all leave this abode and we will go on to another abode. Our physical bodies may perish. But what is the first death that the Prophet is referring to? That the scholars who have commented on this have said that that death that is being referred to here is the death of the ego, the death of the self. When one annihilates the self, the ego that causes so many problems in our world, you begin to live a true life, a God conscious life, a good life. In the brief moments that we have together here, I want to reflect on the big questions of life because today, we are commemorating and remembering our dear beloved Sayyid Anis Ali Hussain Mir. But tomorrow that may be us. Tomorrow that may be you. Tomorrow that may be me. And this environment of COVID and a global pandemic has made this so much more real that many people who thought death was very far away, today they realize it is close. Therefore, tonight and in the brief moments this afternoon that we have together, I want us to consider what are our priorities in life? What are our main focus in life? What is our legacy in life? How will we be remembered? How will the next generations recall our legacy? Will we be people who are missed, or will we be people that, for example, God forbid, the world is glad that we have moved on? Did we live in the way that Ali ibn Abi Talib, the commander of the faithful, said, live amongst people in a way that when you are alive, they crave your company. They want to be with you. And when you die, they weep for you. They cry for you. Therefore, in the brief moments that we have together, I want to look at what is the concept of legacy and how we will be remembered. What is something that we can learn here? I want to look at what is it that our society, our world, what impact can it have on us, whether we realize it or not? What is a drift in society? And number three, I want to look at what should our priorities truly be? And how does Karbala, the Ahlul Bayt, the Holy Prophet, and the messengers of Islam and the global messengers of the Abrahamic faiths teach you and I, how to live in our world? This is our agenda for the brief moments that we have together, wherever you may be, in America or across the globe. From the bottom of your heart, send a salawat on Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. At the first level, if you go to the Supreme Court of the United States of America, the highest court in the land, you will find within this structure, within this building, you will find artwork. Stay with me on this very important point. You will find artwork that is carved into the stonework of the Supreme Court of the United States of America. Within some of that artwork, you will find the carvings of some of the greatest lawgivers in the history of humanity. Some of the people who brought the greatest laws to this world, such as who? Such as Hammurabi and Hammurabi's Code. You will find the likes of Moses and the Ten Commandments. You will find the likes of Napoleon. And amongst those people who are there etched in the stone in the Supreme Court of the United States until this day is the Holy Prophet of Islam, Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam, till this day. Etched into the stone, enshrined for eternity, at least as long as this world prevails. Why? Why is this man Muhammad into the stone of the Supreme Court, where there is a separation of church and state? In fact, an organization that many of you know by the name of CARE tried to have this removed. Why? Because Muslims typically do not make statues or images of the Holy Prophet. Yet the Supreme Court held their verdict and they say it is out of reverence, it is out of respect, It is out of understanding that this man, Muhammad, is one of the greatest lawgivers in the history of humanity. Number one. Number two, when I go to the work, and when you and I go to the work of Michael H. Hart in his book 100, he highlights the 100 most influential people in history, in his view, in his opinion, an astrophysicist and a historian. He says when he comes to the top 5 people who have influenced our world more than any others, according to him, he says number 5 on the list is Confucius. Number 5. These are the top 5. He says number 4 is on the list, Buddha. He says number 3 on the list is Jesus Christ. He says number 2 on the list is Isaac Newton, the physicist. He says number 1 on the list is Muhammad Arabi sallallahu alayhi wa wasallam. Now, the question that I ask and the question that you ask is, oh, Michael H. Hart, although he criticized the Prophet in places, but he says, why, I ask you, why did you put Muhammad at the first position of the most influential people in history, the most influential people in society? He said, look, the answer is very simple. The reason is very simple. He says every single person on this list, except for Muhammad, either brought one of 2 things, one or the other, not both. He said, what is it? He says, if you look at Confucius, number 5 on the list, Confucius brought a spiritual system, not a secular system. He said, if you go to Buddha, he brought a system which was spiritual in nature, not secular. He says, if you look at Jesus Christ, Isa alayhi salam, as we call him, he brought a spiritual system, not a secular system. He says, if you look at Isaac Newton, he says he brought a secular system, physics, and the Newtonian laws, which we study as engineers in academia. He said, but hold on a moment. I want to give a side note, a footnote for our youngsters especially. Whether you realize it or not, Newton wrote about his physics, but he also wrote adamantly about God. In fact, Newton was the Lucasian chair of mathematics at Cambridge University. At Cambridge University, please bear with me on these very important points. The Lucasian chair of mathematics, the same position that Stephen Hawking held at Cambridge University. At that time, the church and the university were so strongly affiliated that you had to pledge allegiance to the Trinity in order to be a professor. Newton said that Jesus never said that he is God. In fact, he went to the extent to say that there is only one God. He was an adamant monotheist to the extent that he got special exemption in order to be a professor at Cambridge University. Nonetheless, I leave that as a side note because many people come forward and say most scientists are atheists. That is not a fact and that is not reality. Many are God-fearing and God-worshipping people, yet it's not known. Isaac Newton, nonetheless, according to Michael H. Hart, was known for his secular contribution. This man, Muhammad, according to Michael H. Hart, is the only person on this list who brought both a spiritual system and a complete socio-economic secular system. He said, I don't have a choice. This man impacted society to that level, that in 23 years, he changed the entire paradigm of a group of people, a group of tribes, that some of which would bury their daughters alive. And in that 23-year period, he changed the trajectory of humanity by doing one thing. What is that one thing? By raising the level of thinking, by raising the level of consciousness, by raising the level of understanding of those people who are around. An often misunderstood person. You see, you and I, we may not have the legacy of the Holy Prophet. We may not be able to have an impact to that global level. However, within our own families, within our own communities, within our own societies, we may be able to have an impact that you and I may not realize, that may pay dividends, that may show fruit years down the line after we are gone. You may say, what's the point of this? Islam has been saying this for time immemorial, but I'll give you one example. Jeff Bezos. Jeff Bezos, considered the wealthiest man in the world at the moment, the founder of Amazon, he makes a decision. He makes decisions in his life based on one thing. The idea is regret mitigation, regret minimization. Why does he do this? He says that most people on their deathbed have regret. I wish I did this, I wish I did that. He says every decision that I make is in order to reduce regret on my deathbed, which gets us thinking. What are the biggest regrets that people have on their deathbed? Luckily for you and I, there has been a study that has been done by nurses and hospices that has exactly addressed this question. They say some of the biggest regrets that people have, the number one regret that people have on their deathbed is, I wish I spent more time with my family. I wish I spent more time with my family. My dear brothers and sisters, all those who may be watching across the globe, what are your priorities? What are my priorities? I want to now come to the second level of analysis of a drift. What is a drift? You see, have you seen water flowing? When you see water flowing, you notice that it may slowly move in a particular direction, whether you realize it or not. So, for example, if I am at the shore of a body of water, for example, the sea or the ocean, and I float in the middle of the ocean, and I don't have any reference point, after 10 minutes, after 1 hour, after 2 hours, after 3 hours, whether I realize it or not, I may have gone very far from my original destination, my original location, I should say, my origin. And where I am now may be very far from where I began. The same way the water has a drift, the same way the sea has a drift, the same way the ocean has a ravangi, the same way that this happens, our societies have drifts. Our society has a flow. For example, where? For example, the Caribbean. If you go to, for example, Jamaica or the Caribbean, people say there's a drift there. What's the drift? Take it easy. Don't take it too hard. Relax. That's one drift. If you go to Silicon Valley, which many of you are watching from, there is a drift there. What is the drift? Technology, entrepreneurship, business. It was not a coincidence that Steve Jobs was born and raised, and became who he became, given that environment and that circumstance. The West has a drift. The East has a drift. Our environment has an impact on us, whether we realize it or not. Now, I've said a lot to you, but it's very important. This conversation may change our lives, and it should not be understated. The Holy Prophet came forward and he said that your focus as a community is the community at large. That you, as a people, your focus is on the family structure and the community at large. A man came to the Holy Prophet and he said, a narrative that's very popular in our world today. He said, Ya Rasulullah, O Messenger of God, what difference does it make if I do what I do as long as it doesn't bother anyone in society? Meaning, for example, I want to drink, I can drink, I won't bother anyone. If I want to eat haram, I can eat haram, it won't bother anyone. I will do something to myself, it won't bother anyone else. What's the big deal? What's the problem? What's the issue here? I become an atheist, it doesn't bother anyone else. Yes, you may say that if I steal from someone, that's a problem. If I take from someone, that's a problem. If I hurt someone, that's a problem. I understand. But what about the things I do to myself? Somebody may say I drink, I eat haram, I do whatever I do. I'm an atheist, for example, whatever it may be. He said, what's the big deal? He said the Prophet had a very eloquent way of responding to people to help them understand. He said, imagine you and I are on a journey. We're on a journey in a boat. He said, we're going on this boat, and you have your seat, I have my seat. We're sitting next to one another. I said, yes. He said, you've bought your ticket, I've bought my ticket in the same boat. I said, very good. He said, now I sitting next to you in the same boat, I take out a drill. I said, okay. You know, the hand drill that they used to have at that time, or something even simpler. He said, then I begin to drill a hole into my seat that I paid for, that I have a ticket for. I begin to drill a hole in that same boat that you are sitting next to me in. Do you accept? He said, no, I would not accept that. He said, why? He said, it's my seat. I paid for this ticket. I own this. It's my possession. I'm drilling a hole. What's the problem to you? He said that you're drilling a hole into the seat of yours will cause our entire ship to sink. He said, exactly is the example of society and community at large. When you begin to compromise the principle of society, when you begin to compromise the essence of society, then everyone goes down. The whole society goes down with it. And don't take my word for it. Read the likes of the decline and fall of the Roman Empire. Look at the Greeks. Look at every civilization that existed before us. You will find that when they began to become relaxed in morality, they began to decline. When they began to go into decadence, they began to decline. You and I are faced with a similar environment. Number two, what is the drift of our society? For example, in America, if you go to the South, from Virginia to Texas, this is called the Bible Belt. If you go to the Northeast, there's a certain environment. If you go to the Midwest, there's a certain environment. The West has a certain culture. California, Washington State, Oregon, these places have a certain culture. What are the most religious parts of America? It's considered the Bible Belt from Virginia to Texas. Is California, for example, considered the most religious place in America? If you look at the statistics, and I come from an engineering background and data background, you will find, and I invite you to look, that California, as an example, is considered a more liberal society. There are pros of this, there are cons of this. Our families, our communities, our societies are impacted by the environment in which we exist. Now, there may be beautiful aspects of our society, and I'm sure there are many, and you can enumerate them and I can enumerate them. But at the same time, is there a certain drift that is taking me in a direction that 5, 10, 15 years down the line, I wonder, how did I end up where I ended up? This is a question for you and I to reflect on. The third level of analysis, as I'm drawing towards a conclusion and going very fast, Emile Durkheim, never forget this name. Emile Durkheim was a philosopher, and I want this to be a universal message for everyone to understand. So you can take this to your classmates, your friends, your colleagues. I read something last year that changed my perspective. That the people who take their lives in America, the demographic that does more than any other in America are elder white males. Now, this is typically thought to be the most privileged community of society, especially I'm speaking to my youngsters right now, the 30 and 40-year demographic and younger. I thought they had everything in society. Why are they taking their lives? And when you go under the surface, you realize that our society, our world, modernity, industrialization is causing us to become much more unhappy. We are becoming sadder as a society. Don't take my word for it. An Italian economist, in fact, in my research, I was looking, he said that the relationship between development, between progress, between economic development and unhappiness or sadness is so strong in society that if you see sadness, if you see unhappiness in society rising, you can infer, you can understand that in our world, economic progress is taking place in that place. That's how strong the connection is. But why? We live in the wealthiest era in history. We live in the most highest income and materially prosperous era in history. We have the best hospitals in history. We have the best cars in history. We have the best homes in history. Take the Bay Area, for example, the wealthiest region per capita in America, in one of the wealthiest countries in the world. Yet unhappiness has become the norm in our society. How is it possible? I thought wealth, I thought income, I thought money makes you happy. But the data, but the research shows otherwise. Emile Durkheim. Emile Durkheim wrote a book in 1897, 123 years ago, 123. He wrote a book in 1897 called Le Suicide. It was in French. He was a professor at the Sorbonne in France, the University of Paris. Do not forget this and they change your life. He said that there are certain elements that he was noticing. He was looking at Italy, at England, and the Netherlands at the turn of the Industrial Revolution. I'm answering the question, what's your legacy and what's your priority in life? What's my priority? What's my legacy? At the turn of the Industrial Revolution, he said that I noticed in Italy, which was the most agricultural society, and then I looked at England, which was more developed than Italy, but less than Netherlands. Netherlands was the most developed at that time. He said, I noticed a trend. Emile Durkheim says, what was the trend? That as industrialization increases, the suicide rate in society increases. As modernity takes place, as industrialization takes place, the sadness, the level of mental health related issues, the level of people taking their lives in society increases. By the way, this is not only a Western phenomenon. This is as true in California as it is in South Korea, as true as it is in Japan, as true as it is in Singapore. You look at the data. I'll invite you to look at it. So the question I'm asking is why? And I'm asking you is why. And Durkheim gave 5 reasons as to why he believed that this is the case. And I want to compare and contrast each one of these with Islam very quickly as we come to a close, inshallah. What is the first reason? Durkheim said that industrialization, modernization leads to unhappiness for the first reason. He said society shifts from community-based to individualistic-based. The Islamic ethos of a community, of a society, is focused on the community, which is comprised of families. I'm talking about this idea of how will you and I be remembered? What's the legacy? You see, when we remember and we commemorate the Marhoom, Sayyid, Anis, Ali Hussain Mir, this individual, it's interesting. I'll stop here for a moment. I remember being in Karbala. I remember being in New York. I remember being in London. I have met many people in the most unique of places. In particular, I remember Karbala, where I met people from the greater California region, for example, in LA. And I mentioned that my relatives, my dear beloved relatives, Sajjad Mir, as well as Anis Mir, who we are commemorating today. And I cannot tell you how many people who I did not know or I was meeting for the first time, they said that this individual, by this uncle of mine, this beloved uncle of mine, he was one of these 2 brothers, was the individual who picked them up from the airport in the 60s and the 70s when there was no one there. What a legacy to remember someone and to look after someone, perhaps in the most vulnerable place when they're coming to a new country, a new place. And there must be dozens and dozens and scores of people like this. This is a legacy that is going to be remembered year on and year out. What's my legacy? What's your legacy? What are you and I remembered for? When we come back to Durkheim, he said community to individualistic. If you look at this example, going to pick somebody up, somebody may say, I don't have time. In an individualistic society. In a community-based society, you make time. So what was happening in China or India, community-based society, was shifting to individualistic. There are benefits of an individualistic society, according to Durkheim, but there are also big problems. What are big problems? When people like Jeff Bezos make it, when people like Warren Buffett make it, when people like Bill Gates make it, when people make it, society says you made it because you tried. But what's the opposite of that? Durkheim identified that when you don't make it, the result ends up being that you are in a much crueler place. Society says you didn't make it because you did not try. So that's the first reason as to why industrial economies are higher in mental illness. By the way, I should mention a very important point here. The suicide, to take one's life, is a tip of the iceberg problem. Listen very carefully to what I'm saying. When the Titanic sank, sometimes we think the Titanic is someone else's problem. There were at least 3 documented Shia, followers Ahlul Bayt, on the Titanic, let alone other Muslims and other people of humanity. When the Titanic sank, they saw the piece that was above the water. But what's the problem with an iceberg? 90% of the mass is below the surface. And that's what took it down. The rates of depression, the rates of anxiety, the rates of loneliness have doubled and tripled in the past 50 to 100 years in America. Why? People are much more alone. So he said the first element is moving from community-based society to individualistic society. There are positives of individualistic-based society. What is that? For example, when I go to work and I say I eat halal, or I eat vegan, or I eat vegetarian, I will be accommodated. In a community-based society, they'll say we have dal chawal, that's what you want, that's what we have, you want it, take it, don't want it, don't take it. But at the same time, there are costs. It's just like my medicine, for example, or your medicine. You take cholesterol medicine, it helps you in your cholesterol, but there may be side effects. It may cause dry mouth, it may cause headaches, it may cause more severe problems down the road, liver problems and the like. The same way is true in our society. Number 1, he said community versus individualistic. Number 2, he said excessive hope. Hope in Islam is a beautiful thing. In fact, one of the biggest sins in Islam is to lose hope in the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. La taqnatu min rahmatillah, we are told. That do not lose hope in the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One of the greatest sins after shirk, one of the greatest sins is to lose hope in the mercy of God. That's how much God focuses on hope in one's life. But at the same time, when you come to lecture, The ulama, the scholars, for example, Ayatollah Dastaghaib Shirazi, he says a lecturer, when he gives a lecture, he should at the same time give people hope of paradise, but he should not give so much hope. It is as if they have a stamp and signed certificate that says, I'm going to heaven or you're going to heaven. Why? Because then we get complacent. Then what ends up happening is we begin to go down the wrong paths. It should be a balance, moderation between both elements of the equation, hope and also some element of doing the right thing. So he said excessive hope. I'll give you another more clear example. What can be the problem of excessive hope? There is a phenomenon called Paris syndrome. I invite in this phenomenon, it happens to Japanese tourists, some Japanese tourists. What happens? They have dreams and aspirations of going to Paris, which I've gone and many of you may have gone to. When they go, they have a dream that they will see the Eiffel Tower. When they see the Eiffel Tower, their dream is that it will be the most beautiful sight that they have ever seen in their life. What happens? They book a flight from Tokyo, they land in Paris. When they land in Paris, they take a flight, they take a drive, a cab, or the metro, and they get to the Eiffel Tower, they open their eyes, and they fall into a depression. Not any old depression, a physical symptom depression. Why? He said, well, this is it? That's it? This is just a tower. We have 50 of these in Tokyo. What's the big deal? That happens again and again in our world. Excessive hope that I will be, for example, the next Jeff Bezos or the likes. It should be with relativism. Jeff Bezos himself as an example. First of all, where did this narrative come that if someone's affluent, there should be role modeled? That's become the norm in our society. It may be good, it may not be good. We don't know. Jeff Bezos himself said, I won a series of lotteries. Warren Buffett himself says that, look, I am one of the luckiest men on the planet. Why? He said, look, number one, I was born in America. Number two, I was able to live a very long life. Number three, I had a network. These things contributed to me being able to be one of the wealthiest people in the world throughout times. Therefore, there's an element of luck that comes into the equation. For those who are in the startup space, I invite you, you know Uber? I invite you to look up Taxi Magic. Taxi Magic, for those of you who are in the startup space, was the same company, same idea, same concept 2 years before Uber. What happened? I don't need to explain to people in Silicon Valley how many skeletons there are in the startup graveyard. Yet, for every Steve Jobs, every Elon Musk, there are 1,000 who are not. Are they bad people? Are they people who are failures? Not at all. But that's how it's portrayed in society. The second level, excessive hope. The third element, which is very important, and I'm getting to this one because I have a point to make here. Excessive freedom. As followers of Ahlul Bayt, as followers of Karbala, I want you to remember one moment. Sayyid al-Shuhada Aba Abdullah is on the plains of Karbala. Ali ibn al-Hussain, the son of Ali ibn Abi Talib, the grandson of Muhammad, is on the plains of Karbala. He's in his final moment. I'm not on Masaib yet, but I'm approaching quickly. He is in the plains of Karbala. They don't know. The enemy doesn't know. Is he alive or is he dead? Umar ibn Sa'ad says, I know how to tell if he is alive or he is dead. So what shall we do? He says, I want you horsemen to go and loot the tents of the women and children. As soon as he gives this order for the horsemen to go and loot the women and children in the tents, there is a cry that is heard from Aba Abdullah's body. He says, In lam yakun lakum deen, wala takhafun al-ma'ad. فَكُونُوا أَحْرَارًا فِي دُنْيَاكُمْ. He calls out to the enemy on the other side. He says, if you have no faith, if you have no religion, and if you do not believe in the day of judgment, at least be free in this world. فَكُونُوا أَحْرَارًا فِي دُنْيَاكُمْ. Ya Aba Abdullah, Ya Hussain ibn Ali, Ya Sayyid al-Shuhada, oh my Imam, 1 second, 1 moment, I beg of you, what is it? That on the other side, the enemy, they have wealth, they have property, they have everything that one would want. They have the hukumat, they have government, they have the horses, they have the cavalry, they have the weapons, every single thing. By society standards, they are the most free people, period. But you're saying they are slaves? They're not free? Aba Abdullah, what is freedom? Who is free? Are we free? Am I free? Who is free in the eyes of Sayyid al-Shuhada? Hur bin Yazid al-Riyahi. Hur is the one who is free in the eyes of Sayyid al-Shuhada. हम शब इंतजार सुबह विसाल शब नहीं जिंदगी गुजारी है और फैसले का है एक पल वरना सोचने को तो उम्र सारी है. The poet Turabi says that there is a whole lifetime to think. There is one moment to act. Hur acted at that moment. Dr. Ali Shariati, he says we are all hur. You are hur, I am hur. That is, we at every moment have the choice and the decision to make the right decision and take action. Action is what changes a life and a destiny. Hur was free. The proof and the dalil is that Aba Abdullah al-Hussain says, Anta hurrun fi dunya wal akhirah. You are free. Your mother named you well hur. You are free in this dunya and you are free in the akhirah, in the hereafter. What is the proof? Further proof. Shah Ismail I, the Safavid ruler during the Safavid dynasty, roughly 500 years ago. He wanted to know, is hur good or bad? I'm talking about freedom. He said, is hur good or bad? He was the ruler of the time. No one could stop him. No one could touch him. He says, I want you to exhume the body of hur. Take out the body of hur. He said, you're the ruler, but we cannot take out the body of someone like hur. How can we do that? He says, I want it done. Because he said that if his body is fresh, then I know that he was on the right path. Because why? Hur was the reason that Abu Abdullah ended up in Karbala. Yes, Abu Abdullah may have forgiven him, but he's still the reason why the Imam ended up in Karbala. So is he good or is he bad? There was a dispute. Shah Ismail says, take out the body. I want to see if he is alive in the flesh, his body is fresh, or it's been deteriorated, it's destroyed. And I've also heard that there was a rumal, there was a handkerchief on his head that Aba Abdullah al-Hussain had put on his head. I want to see. They dug up the body. They exhumed the body. When they exhumed the body, they found the body to be as fresh that day, hundreds of years on, as the day of Karbala. Shah Ismail got his answer, but he didn't stop there. He said, this rumal, this handkerchief, I want it for myself. I want it. They said, Shah Ismail, this, you've seen the body. He's fresh as yesterday. You want us to take this and remove it from his head? He said, yes. Very well. They began to try to remove the handkerchief from the forehead of Hur, the one that Sayyid al-Shuhada had put on his head, the handkerchief of Fatima al-Zahra. As soon as they tried to remove it, blood began to gush out from the forehead of Hur. That's freedom. That's freedom. My dear brothers and sisters, if you want a modern contemporary example, look at the work of Dr. Barry Schwartz. Dr. Barry Schwartz has written a book called The Paradox of Choice. He sent one group of people into the supermarket. He says, I want you to pick between these 4 items. He sent a second group. He said, I want you to pick between these 20 items. He asked the first group, how many of you are happy with your choice? They all said they were happy. He said, the group that picked between 20, how many of you are happy with your choice? All of them said, if we had more time, we would pick something else. The fear of missing out existed, FOMO as it's called. This is not just about grocery items. This is our whole world, from companies like Disney and others that sell this narrative that there is a perfect spouse for you on the other side of the world, in Australia or somewhere else, that you need to go find them, or Scandinavia, you need to go find them. These excessive freedoms lead us to become very unhappy in our lives. The third element. The first, individuality. The second, this excessive hope. The third, excessive freedom. Freedom is good, but what is true freedom? Those people who Aba Abdullah told them on the enemy on the other side, I want you to be free, even if you don't have religion, even if you don't believe in the Day of Judgment. Be free. They thought they were free. They were slaves. Slaves of what? Slaves of their desires. Their want. Omar ibn Saad wanted Rai, which is modern day Tehran and its outskirts. He wanted that place. He was a slave to that desire. What are you and I a slave to? Are we slaves to bank balances? Are we slaves to houses? Are we slaves to cars? Are we slaves to what are the idols that you and I have in our hearts? That's for each one to reflect on. Because what it will challenge your legacy. Why are you remembered? The fourth element, according to Durkheim, as to why society suffers, he says, this is the crux of my argument. Society suffers because family structure weakens. And in particular, the family structure, when it weakens, society weakens, and people become very sad. This is what Durkheim said. Now, in Islam, the focus was the community. Within the community, the focus was the family structure. Within the family structure, the parents. Now I come to the verse I recited at the beginning. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. وَقَضَى رَبُّكَ أَلَّا تَعْبُدُوا إِلَّا إِيَّاهُ وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This same verse, exactly the same or similar to it, with one word or one letter here and there, it appears again and again in the Quran, at least in 5 places. Where? In Surah Baqarah, in Surah Nisa, in Surah An'am, in Surah Isra, in Surah Luqman. All 5 of these surahs have a verse almost exactly the same. What is the verse? وَقَضَى رَبُّكَ أَلَّا تَعْبُدُوا إِلَّا إِيَّاهُ وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. Allah says, I enjoin unto you, do not associate anyone with me. Allah is saying, God is saying, don't associate anyone with me. And do good to your parents. And do good to your parents. And do good to your parents. The mufassirin who do the tafsir of the Quran, the exegesis of the Quran, who explain the Quran, they say the wording and the structure of this is very interesting, that God repeated this again and again. It is as if Allah is saying that I do not allow you to worship anyone except me. But if I allowed you to worship anyone but me, it would be your parents. That is the position of one's parents in the eyes of God, in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That if there was anyone who you could worship after God, it would have been the parents. That's the status. That is the position. Allah doesn't stop there. For example, in Surah Isra, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَقَضَى رَبُّكَ أَلَّا تَعْبُدُوا إِلَّا. He goes further on top of that. And he says, وَلَا تَقُلْ لَهُمَا أُفٍّ. Do not even say uff to them. Do not even say one word to them that may be in a negative light. وَقُلْ رَبِّ ارْحَمْهُمَا كَمَا رَبَّيَانِي صَغِيرًا. And pray, oh Allah, have mercy on them the same way that they had mercy on me when I was a young child, when I was growing up. You know, the Marhoom who we are, my beloved uncle who we are here to commemorate, he's fortunate that he has loved ones, a brother, nephews, children, spouse, loving family who are there to carry on his remembrance. That's family. That's the essence. That's the crux of what is going on here. But you may say, at that point in time, Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam was asked, Yabna Rasulillah, the 6th Imam, he was asked that the Quran says, وَبِالْ وَالِدَيْنِ أَحْسَانًا. Ahsan at once means beautiful, it means good, it means virtue, all three. Ahsan is the root word of Hussain. Ahsan is the root word of Hassan. Ahsan means to do good to your parents. But Yabna Rasulillah, the 6th Imam was asked, what does it mean to do good? If I do, for example, one of the teenagers may say that my parents asked me to clean my room. It took 5 times, but I did it eventually. I did good. What is the definition of good as per the Quran according to the Imam? The Imam says, when the Quran says, وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ أَحْسَانًا, it means that do good to your parents before they ask you to do something. Do it for them. That's when it is good. If they ask you to do it, it's no longer good as per the Quran. The Imam alayhi salam says. Further than this is not something that's limited to Islam. The good to the parents, the good to your parents is the key to every blessing in this life, according to the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. Not my words. Not only Islam, look at other religions on this planet. Look at even non-religion. Plato, the philosopher, of the Greek philosopher, he says a man must do good to his parents in 3 ways: through his wealth and his property, through his body, and through his soul. What does it mean? Through his wealth, he must make sure his parents have a shelter and food. He must make sure through his body When the parents become weak, he is strong. He must look after his parents by carrying groceries or looking after them in whatever way. He says the three, through the spirit. This may be the soul. What is this talking about? You know, sometimes when our parents, they just need a phone call. We don't stop to phone call them. We don't talk to them. Loneliness in America has doubled over the last 50 years. We don't talk to our parents. He says this. Further on top of that, in Judaism, Moses goes to the Mount, 10 commandments. What is one of them? Honor thy parents. In Hinduism, every major religion, you will find the honor and integrity. Why? Because the parents are the nucleus of the family structure. The family is the nucleus of the community. That is how it's built. But I want to give you something else, a gift for you, a gift. Roseto, Pennsylvania. Do you know about the Rosetto effect? For those of you who do not know about the Rosetto effect, look up the Rosetto effect, research it. The Rosetto effect is a phenomenon in cardiology and sociology. This was a town, in fact, I have lectured very close to there, about 40 minutes, in a town called Allentown, Pennsylvania. I went and lectured and I told this there, and it was interesting. I met a brother who had gone to Rosetto to play soccer. I'll tell you about that in a moment. Nonetheless, the Rosetto effect in the 1950s in America, there was an environment where this particular town in America had half the rate of cardiovascular disease compared to the rest of America. Half the rate of cardiovascular disease compared to the rest of America. So this cardiologist said, well, they must eat healthy, so no fat, and they must not smoke, because that's what was known at the time in the 1950s. When they did research, they found everyone in the town ate lard, animal fat, and everyone smoked cigars. I don't recommend anyone do this. But they said that what's the issue? How is it possible? They're healthier than everyone else, but their lifestyle is fat and all these things. So they went into the town. When they went into the town, they realized something. This was a community of Italian immigrants who had moved from Italy to Rosetto, Pennsylvania. Rosetto, Italy to Rosetto, Pennsylvania. They named the town after their hometown in Italy. When they did this, they went into the town, they noticed the way these people lived was different than any other community in America. What does that mean? They imported their community from Italy to America. So they all used to, in the afternoons, get big pots and cook together and laugh and joke. And they had a sense of bonding and community that no other community had otherwise. The cardiologists and the sociologists concluded that their social community was having such an impact on their psychology and their mind and their well-being that they were living longer. What is going on with our communities? Are we the strong? Are we not? We need to reflect, because this is the benefit you'll have in this world. The fourth level was family weakening. That is what's causing people to become sad. The fifth level, the weakening of religion, according to Durkheim. As religion, industrialization was weakening religion. Studies at FSU University, at Harvard University, I can list off 10 others. People who attend, I'm answering the question, why do you need religion? People who attend religious gatherings, either church or mosque or synagogue, at least once a week or more, on average, they are happier, healthier, and wealthier than people that don't. These are benefits that you will get in this dunya, let alone the akhirah, let alone the other world. That's for someone who doesn't believe. But for you and I, Hussain is enough. For you and I, Ali is enough. For you and I, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is enough. I've taken enough of your time, but I thought this was an important message. What will you be remembered for? What is your legacy? What are your priorities in life? Based on this, the priority should be religion and family and your sense of community. These are the things that you will be the most happy with in this world and in the hereafter. And do good to your parents. For those who have their parents alive, thank Allah and derive mercy and blessing from them. For those who don't, realize that it may be something to pray for them. A man came to the Holy Prophet and he said, Ya Rasulullah, pray for me. He said, go to your parents. He said, my mother is deceased. He says, go to your father. My father is deceased. He says, go to their grave. Ya Rasulullah, it's very far. It's not like today you to grab a train, grab a bus, nothing like that. He says, then go to the graveyard and make a shabih, as we would call it. Make a replica and ask Allah, ask God, by the grace of my parents, grant me this hajah. That's the position. The nucleus of the family lies in the parents and their position. Never forget that. Ibrahim al-Mujab was a man whose story you should never forget. Sayyid Ibrahim al-Mujab. He's buried in the shrine of Sayyid al-Shuhada. Mujab means the one who gets a response, who gets jawab. How did he get this title? He was one day in the vicinity of the shrine of Sayyid al-Shuhada. A scholar says that everyone says salam to Sayyid al-Shuhada. But I heard a response, wa alaykum salam ya Ibrahim. I looked to my side, I said, what did I see? I saw a man who was getting a response from the Imam. Because the Imam responds to everyone, but not everyone hears the Imam. He said, how is it that you are hearing and I am hearing? What's going on? He looks at him, he says, you heard it, I'm telling you, don't tell anyone else. He said, every Thursday night, I would used to take either my father or my mother to the ziyarah of Karbala, Sayyid al-Shuhada. I would take one of them with me. He said, it was either my mother or my father. 1 week, it was the turn of my father. When it was the turn of my father, at that point in time, he said that it was my father's turn. That weekend, that Thursday night, my mother said to me, my son, I want to go to Karbala. My son, I want to visit Hussain. My son, I want to see my Imam. He said, my mother, today is the turn of my father. Inshallah, next week I'll take you. She said, but what if I don't live till next week? Very well. Then he went to the father. He said, my father, do you give me permission that I take my mother this week and next week I'll take you, inshallah? He said, what if I don't live till next week? He was perplexed. He made the niyyah, he made the intention at that point in time that he will take both parents. The narration says he put his father on his back and he cradled his mother in his arms. And he set out towards Karbala walking. When he set out towards Karbala walking, there are narrations that a desert storm began to come. When the desert storm began to come, one after the other, his sandal broke. His hands became tired. His back became tired. But he did one dua. He said, Oh Aba Abdullah, oh Sayyid al-Shuhada, just get me towards Karbala. He said, when that happened, at that moment, I don't know how I ended up in Karbala. Through the grace of the Imam. When I got to the sahan of the Imam, when I got close to the Imam, I thought maybe for 2 minutes I'll sit down, I'll freshen up, and then I will go. But he stopped and he said, no. My parents have been waiting too long. I must take them straight to Sayyid al-Shuhada. He took them straight to Sayyid al-Shuhada, Aba Abdullah. When he took them straight to Aba Abdullah, at that point in time, he says, Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. And when he says this, he hears the response, Wa alaykum assalam ya Ibrahim. From that day, he was known as Ibrahim al-Mujab, the one who receives the response. Why? Because of his honor of his parents. Between you and me, I have spoken to scholars. Today, there are Ibrahim al-Mujabs of the scholars in Najaf, in Karbala. You and I don't know them. Their names are known amongst the scholars. That they had this level of respect for their parents, that they became known and they get a response from the Imam alayhi salam. We are commemorating a mu'min, a beloved uncle by the name of Anis, and how appropriate it is that just 2 days ago, Thursday, was the death anniversary of the great poet Mir Babar Ali Anis. And what is a majlis without the fadail of Ali ibn Abi Talib? Anis says, Bina hui jo chashm to noor khuda kaha, uqda khula तो अक्ल ने मुश्किल कुशा कहा मकसद हुआ वसूल तो हाजत रवा कहा पाया दुरे मुराद तो बहरे सखा कहा हम खुश हुए कि मध के दरिया बहा दिए हम खुश हुए कि मध के दरिया बहा दिए क्या बढ़ गया जो बहर में कतरे मिला दिए हम खुश हुए कि मध के दरिया बहा दिए क्या बढ़ गया जो बहर में कतरे मिला दिए. And where there is the zikr of Ali, how can there not be the zikr of Sayyid al-Shuhada? Ruhe azan hai baap, to beta namaz deen. Naqvi. The poet, he says, Ruhe azan hai baap, to beta namaz deen. Masjid Ali ki hai to musalla Hussain ka. Masjid Ali ki hai to musalla Hussain ka. Jagir kibriya hui taqsim is tarha. Jagir kibriya हुई तकसीम इस तरह काबा अली का अर्श मुअल्ला हुसैन का जागीर किबरिया हुई तकसीम इस तरह, काबा अली का, अर्शे मुअल्ला Hussain ka. And I mentioned the concept of freedom. If freedom is what Yazid had, if freedom is what the enemy of Sayyid al-Shuhada had, then what is it? Why were they so afraid of Sayyid al-Shuhada? Why were they so afraid of Imam Sajjad? Why were they so afraid of Zainab that they had to lock them up? The poet says, Babe azmat mein tere, ye hai dalil roshan. तेरा दुश्मन भी तेरे हक में बयां देता है, तेरा दुश्मन भी तेरे हक में बयां देता है, तो बौखलाहट तेरे खुतबों के सबब थी सज्जाद, वरना काफिर भी कहीं हुक्म अज़ां देता है। बौखलाहट तेरे खुतबों के सबब थी सज्जाद, वरना काफिर भी कहीं हुक्म अज़ां देता है। और लुट के आबाद है अब तक जो वो घर किसका है, सबसे ऊंचा है जो कट कर भी वो सर किसका है, सबसे ऊंचा है जो कट कर भी वो सर किसका है। जुल्म शब्बीर की हैबत से न लर्जे क्यों कर, जुल्म शब्बीर की हैबत से न लर्जे क्यों कर, किस नबी का है नवासा ये पिसर किसका है, किस नबी का है नवासा ये पिसर किसका है। और किसके हिजरत के तसलसल से शरीयत है रवां, काफिला आज तलक शहर बदर किसका है, काफिला आज तलक शहर बदर किसका है। और तख्त वालों ने मुअर्रिख भी खरीदे होंगे, तख्त वालों ने मुअर्रिख भी खरीदे होंगे, जिक्र दुनिया में मगर शाम व सहर किसका है। तख्त वालों ने मुअर्रिख भी खरीदे होंगे, जिक्र दुनिया में मगर शाम व सहर किसका है। और लाश अकबर पे कज़ा सोच रही है अब तक, लाश अकबर पे कज़ा सोच रही है अब तक, जिसमें टूटी है ये बर्ची वो जिगर किसका है। लाश अकबर पे कज़ा सोच रही है अब तक, जिसमें टूटी है ये बर्ची वो जिगर किसका है। I am concluding. The poet Anis says, and he captures the heart of Sayyid al-Shuhada, Aba Abdullah, a father. What was going through the heart? Do you know what Anis says? Do you know what difficulties Aba Abdullah went on the day of Ashura? The poet says, do you know, he captures a reality of humanity. Do you know what he says? The poet Anis says, Abbas mar gaye, Ali Akbar juda hua, Abbas mar gaye, Ali Akbar juda hua, हमसे किसी ने ये भी ना पूछा कि क्या हुआ। And he says that Abbas died, Ali Akbar separated from me. Nobody even asked me what went through my heart. Ajrukum ala Allah. I will only give you Masaib for just a brief moment. But these are the zamana for the day of judgment. Who knows what else will come in handy? That these crying, these tears will be the things that will help us on the day of judgment. छोड़ता नहीं हमको करबला का गम तन्हा, छोड़ता नहीं हमको करबला का गम तन्हा, वरना चल नहीं सकते हम तो दो कदम तन्हा, वरना चल नहीं सकते हम तो दो कदम तन्हा। और शाह के अज़ादारो तुमको खौफ महशर क्या, जामिन शिफात है एक अश्क गम तन्हा। अजरुकुम अल्लाह। अबा Abul Fadl al-Abbas. Two hearts, two people broke the heart of Sayyid al-Shuhada. Their death did. Who? Abbas and Ali Akbar. And no one asked Sayyid al-Shuhada what went through his heart. Abbas on the day of Ashura, he was a very strong man, a very tall man. They say that the horse was below him. When he would stand, his feet would be on the ground. That was the stature of Abbas. But when he went to get the water, he's coming back towards the tent. When he's coming back towards the tent, he has a water skin, a mushk in his hand. One hand is struck, then the other hand is struck. Abbas puts the water skin in his mouth. Then an arrow strikes the face of Abbas. They say one goes to the water skin, one goes to his eye. Abbas falls towards the ground. Hussain, Aba Abdullah, runs to his brother. They have the heartwarming moment, the final moment together. But I want to go somewhere else. I want to give a gift to my youth. I was in London last year and I saw something amazing in my past few trips in the past several years. A gift for you. When you are in the most difficult time, never forget the Fatiha of Ummul Baneen. I saw young people doing this and they stood by it because it has helped them in the most difficult times. You know, typically amal and these du'as are done by elders. But young people were doing the Fatiha of Baneen, that when you have the most difficult time, send a Fatiha on the mother of Abul Fadl Abbas, Babul Hawaij. Why? Because Babul Hawaij is the gateway to your desires. And the Jannah of Abul Fadl Abbas is under the feet of Baneen. Do you know what happened when the news reached Medina? Baneen did not cry for Abbas, but many days later, she went to Jannatul Baqi and she said, Abbas, I hear that you died. How could you let Hussain, the son of Fatima, how could you let him be struck? But Abbas, I heard they cut your right hand and I heard they cut your left hand. Abbas, you were on your horse. I just have one question. When you fell to the ground, did you fall on your chest or did you fall on your face? Baneen, my salams on you. It was neither his chest and it was not his face. Do you know what hit the ground first when Abbas fell? Baneen, the arrow in the eye of Abbas. It hit the ground first. It went through his eye. It went through his eye. Salams on Abu Fadl al-Abbas. And the final narration. If you ever want to know, look at the perspective of Ali Akbar from the lens of Aba Abdullah al-Hussein. This is the masayib of a father. What's the proof? What's the evidence? When Sayyid al-Shuhada allowed Ali Akbar to go towards the battlefield, he followed him with footsteps. Ali Akbar heard the noise. He turned back. He said, my father, why are you following me? He says, Akbar, if you had a son like you would know what's going through my heart. My son, do you know how close you are to me? He said, then go towards the battlefield. I will be patient. But when Ali Akbar went, he looked towards the heavens. Hussein looks towards the heavens. He says, Allahumma shahad ala ha'ula'il qawm. Oh Allah, bear witness over this nation. Why? خلقا وخلقا ومنطقا, the one who in the way he walked, the way he talked, the way he thought, he resembled your messenger more than anyone. He is going, that whenever we wanted to see the Holy Prophet Muhammad after he died, we would look at this young man. He is going towards the battlefield. When Ali Akbar fought courageously, he fell towards the ground. He called out to his father. When he called out to his father, do you know what he said? Anis the poet, he captures this moment where a father is going after his son to protect his son. Do you know what he says? Anis says that Hussain said, Beta pukaro phir ke basarat mein farq hai, ए नूर आइन जिस्म की ताकत में फर्क है, जख्मी है कल्ब रूह की राहत में फर्क है, तुम ये न जानियो कि मोहब्बत में फर्क है, जख्म जिगर मिला तुम्हें गोदी में पाल के, किसको दिखाऊं अपना कलेजा निकाल के. And he says this was going through the heart of Aba Abdullah. Do you know that when Ali Akbar died, Imam Hussain put his cheek on the cheek of Ali Akbar and he said a line for history. He said, Ala dunya ba'daka al-afa. My son, after you, there is dust on this earth, on this world. There is no value. But Ali Akbar responds according to Anis. What did Ali Akbar say as his father was trying to come towards him? He says, Nagah sada ye aayi ke baba idhar hu main. Nagah sada ye aayi ke baba idhar hu main. नखले बागे फातिमा ज़ेरे शजर हूँ मैं, खालिक से लौ लगी है चरागे सहर हूँ मैं, जल्द आइए कि आपका प्यारा पिसर हूँ मैं, जख्मे जिगर कहीं न अजल का बहाना हो, जख्मे जिगर कहीं न अजल का बहाना हो, दीदार देख लें तो मुसाफिर रवाना हो, दीदार देख लें तो मुसाफिर रवाना हो. سيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. Ya Allah, bless this holy gathering. Raise and elevate the darajat and the position of Sayyid Anis Ali Hussain Mir and give him a place in the Jawar of the Ma'sumin. Ya Allah, allow us to prioritize the true things, the deen, the faith, the religion in our lives, our family, our community in our lives. Ya Allah, allow this COVID virus to be removed from this world. Allow all those who are suffering in the world, allow them peace, allow them tranquility. Give us physical and mental tranquility in this world. Ya Allah, hasten the reappearance of Imam Sahib al-Asr wa Zaman and allow us to be amongst his companions when he returns. And a final request for Surah al-Mubarak al-Fatiha, for your marhumin, for our marhumin, for all those who do not have someone to recite a Fatiha for them, and of course for Sayyid Anis Ali Hussain Mir, al-Fatiha ma'as salawat.